You all must know that this first step, I have just tackled a huge hurdle in my life. I am terrified of speaking in public. That is unbelievable that I just made that step. I'm like a kid. Whoa. So here we are. The second thing you should know is for the past few days I've been fighting a flu. And so I had memorized this beautiful speech that I was going to regale you all with, and I was going to be very impressive. And I woke up this morning and that speech disappeared. So now I'm just going to sit here fully myself with the story of how I got here in this chair. I'm a kid from Miami, Florida, who had two very loving parents that every day I would come home from school and tell them how I couldn't go back the next day because kids were so mean and they made fun of me because I was different. I was different for so many reasons. Mainly because I was always trying to be myself. When everyone else kept telling me how to be like someone else, I would sit in class and I would draw in my textbooks, and my teacher would come along and say, "Malcolm, why can't you be more like Johnny?" And I would think, yeah, because I think Johnny's already taken. And I'm pretty cool with just being Malcolm that's going to sit here and draw and kind of chime in when no one was asking or when my hand wasn't raised. And I'd go home and I'd say, "I can't go back tomorrow." And my mother would say to me, "You're going back tomorrow, and you're going to be more than you were today." And I have always lived with that philosophy, that every day I will be more than I was the day before. So 30 years ago, in 1985, I decided that I would leave Miami and move to New York City. And my mother said two things to me as I was getting ready to leave. "Whatever you do, please do not join the Hare Krishna." And no tattoos. The next day that I arrived in New York City, I had dinner with the Hare Krishnas because they were available. 2 days after that, I got my first tattoo. So I have been in that city of magic, discovering, finding, locating any group, any person, anything that registered outside of being like Johnny. Anything. That sort of following of whatever that thing is, that need to be a part of what is disrupting, has allowed me to maneuver in a world where it is very difficult, when you can never, ever fit in. And I used to think, what curse is this that I've been given, that I just don't fit in? And then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, I just stopped trying to fit in because it was not possible for me. I got very lucky. A designer from Paris saw me walking down the street in one of the many costumes that I would create for myself in order to create an armor to go into the world. And this designer was a designer by the name of Jean-Paul Gaultier. And he invited me to come to Paris. At the time, I didn't have a passport, and I thought, well, that's not going to be possible because he wanted me there the next day, and it was just sort of, yeah, no. I run into a friend and I tell them this story that this designer wants me to come to Paris, and they say, you know, you can get all you need is a ticket, and then they'll give you a passport the same day or the next day. I go with this friend with my birth certificate that my mom had put in a folder of important things, with the note also, do not join the Hare Krishna, and a reminder. The next thing I know, I am in Paris. And all of a sudden, no one was asking me to fit in. Everyone kept saying, more of that, Malcolm. Give us more of that. Can you do this? And I would say, yes, I can do that. Do you want me to spin around in circles until I'm dizzy? And you're going to take my picture? I will spin, spin, spin. Because of that designer, I got to sit with him while he drew things and pinned things, and I would just watch in amazement because I had secretly always wanted to do exactly what he was doing. I had wanted to be a designer, but I did not dare say that out loud to people for fear that they would tell me to be more like Johnny. Poor Johnny. Then because of that following of wanting to be around that energy, I got even luckier because this designer started to then work with celebrities, and they would come into the studio where I was spinning around in circles and having my photo taken. And I was not a model by any far stretch of the imagination. I was just, well, I had good cheekbones, and that helped. But I was just there because I wanted to be in that energy. The next thing you know, we have this sort of day that the office is completely silent because there's this woman that's going to come in, and no one, it was all top secret. The woman that walked in the door was about this tall, and she was Madonna. And we were all sort of, you've got to be kidding me. I don't know what happened. Everyone else seemed to run away and to get into circles and huddle and whisper. I decided to go straight up to the little lady, and I said, I'm going to be a designer one day. And so she looks at me and she says, yeah, right, kid, okay. You're gonna be a designer, like, big deal. And I was like, no, seriously, I'm going to be a designer. And she said, well, when you start designing, find me. 3 years later, I moved back to New York, and I had gotten up the courage to buy a bolt of fabric. And I started making, with a dear friend of mine, these little dresses. Like they were really bad. But it was my first attempt at using my own gift to try to create something. The next thing that happened in following this, whatever that thing is, that happens when you are trying to create your story. Someone said that Madonna is doing a movie, and she's looking for young designers to support in this project. I don't know how, but I found a way to get my horrible little dresses in front of the little lady, because she's all of this tall, like, you know. And she said to me, after, you know, some connections of calling and all of this thing, she said, this is pretty good. I will wear one of your dresses. And so that happened, and the next thing you know, I was a big designer. And I thought, this is going to be my life. I am going to be a fashion designer. And I tell you that story only because I spent 15 years in the world of fashion, where I was convinced that that was it. That I would wake up every morning and I would make beautiful dresses. I would be in this world of creativity, and that my life would be perfect because I had created this beautiful, magical life with all of these beautiful, magical people. And then one day, I realized that I was playing at being myself. I'd fallen into a role. I was everything that everyone wanted a designer to be. But in that, I had lost myself. There's something wonderful that happens when you decide to blow your life up completely and say, now let's see what I can really do. Let's see what I can really make happen when I push every boundary, every part of who I am, and to be bigger than I was the day before. And so when I was thinking about doing this talk, and I'd come into this idea of cool, and to be given a title by a woman who sort of, I think when she first, so 5 years ago, you know, mind you, this is all, because the speeches I had for you guys, this is not it. So 5 years ago, so it's going to be all over the place. And so my biggest fear of doing this TED Talk was, oh, what if my voice cracks? What if I forget what I'm supposed to say? What if that is what cool is? Cool is being able to go off and to be a designer. Cool is going off to be a writer. Cool is being whatever the fuck you want to be. That is what cool is. Okay? That's what cool is. So after I decided to walk away from this life as a fashion designer, I really was lost. I had no idea who or what I was. And because I was a fashion designer, so I thought that those years had just been wasted. What did you do? You know, you have all of, you know all of these people, you know, and what does that mean? I had made a dress once for a woman named Ariana Huffington, and had never even thought about it. Years later, she started what is now known as the Huffington Post. And I run into her by chance And she says to me, do you know I still have that dress you made me? That dress is really cool. And I thought, oh, okay. I run into her again, and it's that thing when you keep running into someone, and you think, why am I running into Ariana Huffington all the time? And then at that point, she had been on television, and she had that voice. And every time she would see me, she'd be, darling, darling. So we were standing there talking, I think it's Four Seasons or someplace strange. And she says, so what are you doing now? And it was a feeling of, I'm not doing anything except for being me at the moment. And she said, so she started asking me about, so what did you go to school for, all of these things? I was like, well, I went to school for journalism because I thought, I'll never get a job doing that. And so she asked me to come to the Huffington Post to see if I would be interested in writing. And I said, okay, I'll go. But I have no idea what I'm going to write about. And she said to me, every time I see you, you're around really interesting and cool people. And I said, but that does not make a job, because I needed a job. So what I started to do was to interview the people that were around me. And really talking to them about their creative process. Because I knew all of these designers, I knew all of these writers, because I had been a designer, I knew all of these actresses and celebrities and people who the world had never heard of. And so I used my gift to lend voice to what they were doing. And what's interesting is that every day I wake up, there's a new opportunity presented to me. And it is, in a way, because I am open to everything. I am open to hearing more, seeing more, feeling more, which can be a very difficult place to be sometimes, because sometimes I feel overwhelmed by it all. But that is my gift. My gift is to be able to feel things, to see things, and to know that every single person that I meet, that I look at, is also trying to do the same thing in their own way. Is that they are trying to be bigger and better than they were the day before. And so I sit here looking out at all of you wonderful, magical people. And I give you one challenge. Don't be like Johnny. Just be you. Bigger, better, cooler, and more authentic than you were the day before. And that's it.